Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Perfect peace. This is podcast number 6, if I'm not mistaken. We got some wild topics today. Got Mr. Nobody in here.
Mr. Fish.
And Mr. Fish in here.
What are we going to talk about today?
I got some conspiracy for
I
you.
don't know it. Keep
So-
holding it back from me. I want to hear what's going on.
This is about President Lincoln versus President Kennedy. Alright.
Okay.
So, pretty much everybody knows a little bit about President Lincoln. You know anything about him?
He was our president. He was assassinated.
Civil War president, right? And fought for to free the slaves. That's one thing he wanted. And then President F. Kennedy, of course, similarity, assassination. But what was Kennedy trying to do as far as to segregate schools, right? So they both fought for civil rights. That's a big similarity between both of them, right? All right, well, this is where the conspiracy begins, okay?
All right.
So we got Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. John Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. John F. Kennedy was elected president in 1960. Okay, this is just the beginning. That's like, ooh, who cares? Big deal, right? Both were particularly concerned with civil rights, we just talked about. Both wives lost a child while living in the White House. Okay, big deal. Still just like, whatever, big deal, right?
Oh, gosh, where in the heck is this one going?
We're just getting started, right? Just getting started. Both presidents were shot on a Friday.
Is that all you got?
All right, we're starting to warm up a little bit. Both presidents were shot in the head. Big deal, right? It's one of the places to get shot. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy. And you know where this is going. Kennedy had a secretary who was named Lincoln. Pretty wild, right? Both were assassinated by Southerners. Both were succeeded by Southerners named Johnson. So both had a president named Johnson then. Let's see. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson, who succeeded Kennedy, was born in 1908. Alright. Just getting warmed up now.
Oh, God, right.
John Wilkes Booth, who was assassinated, who assassinated Lincoln, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, who assassinated Kennedy, was born in 1939. Both assassins were known by 3 names, and that's a normal thing for assassins these days. Usually an assassin has 3 names if he's trying to kill somebody important.
Really?
Yes, they do the full name. Let's see. Both names were composed of 15 letters. Lincoln was shot at the theater named Ford. Kennedy was shot in a car called a Lincoln made by Ford. Right?
Yeah.
This is just getting on. We got a little bit more to go. Let's see. Booth and Oswald were assassinated before their trials. A week before Lincoln was shot, he was in Monroe, Maryland. A week before Kennedy was shot, he was with Marilyn Monroe. Lincoln was
still
shot.
have no idea where this is going. Still don't, but this is all crazy.
Lincoln was shot in a theater, and the assassin ran into a warehouse. Kennedy was shot from a warehouse, and the assassin ran into a theater. Do you see how everything's reversed like a mirror?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the exact opposite,
Right.
which is a big, big thing for the Illuminati.
Okay.
Their symbolism is a lot like that. They like to just do the exact reverse, I guess you would say, but it still be the same thing. And I mean, just out of curiosity, what would you think would be the point of them doing something like that?
This story's already been written? That it's like been pre-written. Like, I mean, that's just too coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
And for 100 years, 100-year span.
Exact opposite, basically.
So this has been going on for stuff like this between the pre-written stories for 100 years.
Well, and it also makes you realize that at least definitely Lee Harvey Oswald was definitely the whole fall guy in the whole thing, because for it to be planned out like that, the average human could not plan the exact opposite of the way for it to go down like that and make it work. What it shows to me too is just in general, those elites like to show that they're smarter and they're playing chess and we're playing checkers, and that they can plan things 100 years in advance like that.
So the Illuminati, let's just tell me more about Illuminati.
Well, Tupac says Illuminati all through your body like a 12-gauge shotty. I'm just messing with you. No, it's definitely an ancient group that goes way back. Some say as far as ancient Egypt, but at least as far back as like the Knights Templar. Do you know anything about the Knights Templar?
I know, this is the first time I've ever heard about it.
They're the back in the day, Israel was constantly having people come and try to take over, especially after the Romans were done. And so the Knights Templar would go to Israel and protect them from like the Muslims and stuff like that. And it started out, I kind of think, in a decent way, that they were fighting for God. But just like anything, it became corrupted, and they eventually, it wasn't so much about protecting Israel as it was protecting the holy relics. And they say that the Knights Templar were responsible of getting a lot of very sacred items out of Israel before the Muslims did take it over. And then a lot of those items just happened to disappear. I think a lot of them are in the Vatican. The Vatican has a vault where the Catholics are, you know. They have a vault that only certain people were allowed in, and apparently it's like massive, like goes on for forever, like a giant warehouse of all ancient stuff that no one's allowed to view unless you're in the Catholic Church and really high up. A lot of people say they have pieces from the cross that Jesus died on, that they have like Jesus clothing, I don't know, all kinds of stuff like that. The Holy Grail, they say they have that, you know, which is the cup that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. But Knights Templar eventually had some kind of falling out with the Catholic Church. That's where Friday the 13th comes from. Apparently a lot of them were rounded up and killed by the church, I think because they were gaining too much power, possibly. But that's where Friday the 13th came from. That's when the Knights Templar were all rounded up and killed by the church or whatever. But I think that drove the Knights Templar underground, and it disappeared because at the time the Catholic Church was also hating on them, they were hating on scientists. And any scientist that was saying something different than what the church was saying, the Catholic Church, then they were having them, you know, locked up or persecuted or whatever. And so at the same time, the Knights Templars kind of going underground, the scientists went underground because the church wouldn't even let them practice chemistry and all these different things that they wanted to do. So they went underground as well. Now, I don't know exact details, but there somehow a union there. And now that the Catholic Church has officially changed, because the Catholic Church at the time was keeping the translation of the Bible away from the people. So you had to go to church, and you would hear a priest read in Latin, which nobody could understand at the time. And then he would then translate it to the people, which meant he could say whatever he wanted to say, it said. And nobody could like read the Bible. And so they were protecting all this information to have control over the people. And the scientists were trying to show other things, and that's why they had to go underground. But eventually the church, the Bible was translated, everybody could read it. The church had to fade out on that. And I feel like eventually the church linked back up with the Knights Templar, who are now connected to the scientists. And the Catholic Church is out in the front for people to see, but behind closed doors, they're running an empire together with everybody. And all these Knights Templars and all these scientists eventually become today's billionaires. And once you get to the level of either fame or money, then they come to recruit you. And if you say no and you remain quiet about the whole thing, they'll leave you alone and let you kind of make your own money. But they're not, you're going to be cut out from basically the big boys and the big money. You know what I mean? It's a secret group that run the world, and our politicians listen to what they have to say because they have all the money. So it's very important what they have to say. And, you know, politicians that decide to go against what they have to say, I feel like get popped. Like Lincoln, I think he decided to do a few things that they didn't like. Kennedy definitely did. Kennedy was doing all kinds of stuff that they didn't like. All right, so we were talking about the Illuminati, and I looked up the name again because it slipped my mind, but it's Adam Weishaupt who started the official Illuminati when they were still a secret group, but it was a little more known that they were around. It wasn't like you knew somebody in it, but people started to know that there was a secret group of people like that, but still hidden, completely hidden underground. And then around that time is when you start hearing about the Rothschilds, and I know you've heard that name before. Their family is, to my knowledge, the richest family in the world. Some of those Arabian oil guys might have some more money, but as a family together, they have insane amounts. I've heard it's in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars collected as a family. To create that no one ever was able to get money from their family, they used to marry within their family to have
that's right,
that bloodline or whatever. But nowadays they actually marry outside their bloodline. But they are definitely a satanic family. You can look up their pictures of their parties that they have, and it's weirder, way weirder than P. Diddy's parties. It's like P. Diddy's parties, but we're running around with like goat heads on and blood and all that kind of stuff, you know? The ones who tell politicians what to do, that kind of thing. I believe that they're one of the top in the what I call the 13 families. That's why you hear the number 13 all the time. Supposedly there's 13 families that communicate with each other on how to run the world, like a round table.